Thank you, Sujay. Appreciate it. Can you guys hear me all right? Is that working?
I get it.
Let's see if it turns on. Give me a second. You might have to yell. Hello, hello. Oh, this guy's. Yeah, give me a second. All right. I'll scream a little bit. Nice to be here, and it's nice to be back. I have to say, the campus has changed so dramatically since I went to school here. This is amazing. There was no engineering quad when I went to school here originally. There was just a quad. The boneyard was not something you wanted to look at. It was not at all attractive. It was just, it's interesting. This is such an amazing engineering school. But if you came here back in those days, I grew up in Illinois, so it was obvious for me to come here with such a great engineering school right here in the state. But if you came here back in those days, you wouldn't have believed it by looking at the facilities. The facilities were really out of step with the quality of this of the campus, and so it's really great to see the new building, the new ECE building, this building, just the presence of the engineering campus and the tools you guys have now. It's fantastic. But I had a great experience at University of Illinois, and I want to tell you a little bit about it today. I'm prepared a short talk, a little bit about myself, a little bit about Nokia, just so you know what Nokia is doing nowadays, and then some advice I thought I'd share with you guys that I've learned along the way through the years that I've been doing this. So it's intention, focus, and something. And by the end of the presentation, you can see if you can guess what the something is. These are, as you might imagine, some of the ingredients of success. There's many ingredients of success, obviously, not just intention and focus. Intention, there's another word maybe for choices, your intentions. Focus or perseverance, really important. And then there's one other really, really important one that's actually arguably more important than the other two. I'll let you think about it as we go. I thought I'd start by sharing a little bit, though, on my background. So I graduated in '84 with a BS in computer engineering. And I didn't have a tech background at the time, meaning my family was not tech. So I didn't know the industry that well. I grew up with computers. I grew up tinkering with computers, had that aptitude, like I'm sure many of you do. But I didn't really know what to do when I got my first job offers. It was back in 1984. The market was hot. The market's hot now. And so I had a lot of different offers. I think at the time I had 13 job offers when I came into college. It was even more hot than it is now. It was crazy. And of course I was trying to figure out what was I going to do with IBM, Amdahl, Hewlett-Packard, all the big names. There were no Googles at the time. There was no Facebook. They were the traditional computer companies. And I finally decided to go into a company called Advanced Micro Devices. How many of you have heard of Advanced Micro Devices? Yeah, a processor company, very well known in that time for challenging Intel. A really cool company at the time. I have to tell you, one of the reasons I joined that company, the primary reason is more interesting than this, but they had the coolest ad ever, and it was a guy on a suit on a surfboard, and it said "Catch the Wave." And of course, I was dreaming of California, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I figured, okay, this is going to be great. But of course, the reason I did it really was I had offers in all these various industries, including mainframes, mini computers, test equipment, and I didn't really have a contact for figuring out which of those was going to be an area I would want to invest my time in. So I figured if I went into semiconductors, I'd get a chance to work with all the industries and maybe get a chance to see which one appealed to me most and then go deep in that one area. That was my rationale ultimately for taking the job with AMD. AMD, by the way, was not just a processor company at the time. In fact, it was a memory company. It also made programmable logic. In fact, one of the reasons I was interested in AMD was at U of I, the computer architecture course was taught around a thing called bit-slice microprocessors, and they were the coolest thing ever. It was how you build your own CPU using bit slices and programming time. It was just a very cool architecture. So anyway, I got very excited by the company I joined. My intention really was to understand what are the big opportunities out there. I then spent more time there than I thought I would. I spent over 10 years, a little over 10 years at AMD. And I climbed the chain, did various jobs, was in various positions. And I finally found what I really was super excited about, and it was networking. And it was the early, early days of networking. Nowadays we take Wi-Fi for granted. We take Ethernet for granted. And pretty soon Ethernet will be, it'll always be there, but a lot of people don't even need to know about Ethernet now because they just connect wirelessly everywhere, whether it's on the wide area network or on Wi-Fi. But back then there wasn't even a wired LAN. So it was just starting. The industry was just starting. It was really exciting, and it's not rocket science. I looked at it and said, "This is going to be big. If this we're going to have to connect everything." It was that simple. I will talk about a little comment on that later. So I jumped into networking. I spent a lot of time on it, and I ultimately jumped into it with my first startup, which is a company called Rapid City Communications. Probably never heard of Rapid City Communications. How many of you heard of Rapid City Communications? Okay, if anybody raised their hand, I was going to know they're fibbing. Because there's no way you would have heard of that. It was a small company, a very good company, tiny. 20 people when I joined. We grew to about 100 people or so. We sold it to Bay Networks, which you might have heard of, which became Nortel because Nortel acquired that company, and then at that point I exited. I built an Ethernet switch, for building campus networks. And along the way, myself and a few other guys that were building these products had an idea for a new class of product, and we started our own company. That was called Symetra Networks. We started Symetra. We got venture funding. We raised about $50 million in 2 rounds. We hit some hard times in the macro environment. The market was very tough for a while. The market kind of ebbs and flows. And we sold our company to Alcatel. Alcatel's a French telecommunications company that merged with Lucid. And then Alcatel-Lucid was recently bought by Nokia. So it's interesting. Since I graduated, I've literally only made 2 job changes. But I've worked for almost 10 companies. I think 8 to 10 companies, something in that range. And I'm going to come back to that because I think it's important. When we hire people, we look for people. One of the things we look for is people that stay with things for a period of time. There's an ethic in Silicon Valley sometimes that job jumping is interesting. You jump. I personally don't like to hire job jumpers, and it's nothing to each his own. But my belief is to do anything meaningful in life, you've got to focus on it for a meaningful period of time. And we need people that are going to apply themselves and stay on something. When it's tough, when it's easy, when it's good, when it's bad, you've got to stay on it for a while. And I think that's some advice I want to give you guys. So we'll talk a little bit about Nokia now. I'll come back to my career a little bit towards the end and how it might apply to some of the choices you may be making. Because I presume many of you are making choices. How many of you are seniors? Yeah, okay. And if you're not, you're probably already thinking about what do you want to do, where do you want to go. And a quick question also, how many CS in the room? Okay, and then Compi, is there a bunch of Compi? Okay, great. And electrical engineering? Okay, great. And philosophy and religion? Yeah, we got a minor. Excellent. Important topic. So I'm not going to get into that today. So Nokia, I want to tell you a little bit about Nokia first, and you probably know of Nokia like this. You may not know much more about Nokia. You say, well, isn't Nokia gone? What happened at that company? Nokia was, of course, the #1 mobile phone company. And it wasn't only a mobile phone company, by the way. It had other businesses, but people didn't know that because the primary business was the mobile phone. And it's a very storied and difficult evolution they went through. It's a Finnish company. They were on top of the world. And like BlackBerry, Apple, and ultimately Android dethroned them. Just really kind of changed everything. Very interesting lesson in this, in how Nokia managed that product transition. For that matter, how BlackBerry managed the transition. Way too late, and Microsoft for that matter. So Nokia was in this business, but ultimately decided to get out and sold that to Microsoft, because Microsoft still had an ambition to be in the mobile phone business. And they still do, though their recent CEO, I think, is taking a little bit more of a balanced view of it. And I think it's a tough road right now to bring in another, to establish market share with another mobile operator. So Nokia did the right thing here. By the way, I have to credit Nokia. I was not part of Nokia at the time. But Nokia looked at it and said, we're not going to be able to fix this. BlackBerry has been trying to fix it since they did come out, by the way, with a good operating system, BB10. It's excellent. It's actually great, but it's way too late. And all the apps are written on the other two platforms. And so they tried, and now they've had to wind it down. And you might have seen recently BlackBerry just announced, after being a 20% of the global market owner of mobile phones, had to announce they're exiting building their own phones. It's just the way it is. By the way, there's a theme in all of this, which I love. And you should love it too. There is so much change in our industry, it's stunning. It's stunning. One of the things I feel most lucky about, being in an industry that has fundamental change going on continuously. And by the way, I would argue that you guys and myself and a few, maybe a generation before me, well, not a generation, but let's say a span of about 50 years here, we're incredibly lucky because we're in the run of the transistor, the run of Moore's law, if you want to call it that, the run of the race to Shannon's limit. We're in a period of time when everything changes every 2 or 3 years, so much so that companies that have established themselves as seemingly unassailable, Microsoft, are all of a sudden on their heels. And you can even imagine that a Google, who at one point seemed unassailable, and they feel pretty good right now, but yet, with Facebook and some other guys attacking and Amazon, they've got some pretty good competition too because of the evolution of technology. Technology is kind of this interesting thing, or the core technology, which is one of the reasons I like understanding it top to bottom. It's like trying to play a competitive sport, but the ground moves. It's different. It's very different. I always thought to myself, what if I had taken instead of a career in marketing or whatever, I ended up in Procter & Gamble? Like, it'd be fun, I guess, but new toothpaste, new formula. It's not like this. This is unbelievable. This is a situation where entire markets, massive markets, change. And we change how people do things. So anyway, I just want to congratulate you on being here. And I really mean that. Because to be here, you had to make choices. And you chose to be in this. And choices are life. In the end, you look back on your life, it's a series of choices. And then it's a series of, and then it's focus and choices and focus and choices. And that one other thing that I talked about, which I haven't yet told you, which I'm going to come back to at the end, that you have to be extremely good at to be truly successful. So Nokia made an interesting choice. They said they saw the writing on the wall. They didn't write it down. They sold it for $7 billion to Microsoft. A brilliant move. And they focused on their other business, which is cell towers. They're one of the biggest providers of equipment, not only antenna, but the big equipment at the base, what's called the base stations that work the air interface on the other side of the mobile phone. That's where I come in. I started this company I mentioned called Symmetra Networks, and our objective was to change IP routing. How many are you pretty familiar with networks? Okay, so fairly good. So the global internet is built on a protocol called BGP and IP routers, a big mesh of routers. And it's really remarkable, stunning, that it works as well as it does. Because it's a somewhat arbitrary mesh with a huge number of links and a huge number of nodes. And because of the resiliency of the protocols, and the protocols have evolved to a degree, but many of them are really fundamentally the same in the computer science aspect, and they reconverge, whenever there's an event. They survive. They survive very well. And in fact, it's amazing how big this network has become and how well it behaves, considering what's happening. At any moment in time, as you might imagine, at any moment in time, a backhaul is cutting a fiber accidentally. A central office is going down because it loses power. There's a flood. It takes out, so nodes are coming and going, links are coming and going, and the whole network is reconfiguring real time so that we can get the packets to the right place, so that if you're going to Amazon.com and a node goes, a link goes, we just route it around. And it's a live protocol that's communicating these maps of the internet. So as we looked at that, this is back in 2000, and what we were looking for, we were saying, what's going to change? What's going to change that we can take advantage of and apply new technology to? Which is, I think, if you're interested in startups or even starting something in a big company, is what you have to be doing. looking at the evolution of the market, looking at the evolution of technology, looking at the intersection, and trying to figure out what will change. We decided at the time, video was carried on separate networks, generally satellite networks, cable networks. Voice was carried on a separate network, the public switch telephone network. VPNs, or corporate traffic, was carried on a separate network called frame relay, sometimes with ATM, which is asynchronous transfer mode. If you read the history books, you'll know what that is. So we looked at all these networks and carriers and these big companies, and they would build each of these networks separately, and they'd have to manage them separately. They said, why can't we run that all on one IP platform? Why can't we run voice, video, data, VPNs, everything on IP? And there were a lot of reasons why you couldn't. IP didn't fail over fast enough, so a voice call would be interrupted if you actually tried to run voice on the internet. Video sessions there'd be sometimes too much loss, they wouldn't work properly. There was all kinds of problems. So we wanted to solve the problem. And we built a new router that Cisco and Juniper had not really envisioned, and we started our business. So we started our business in 2000. We had the good fortune of raising money at a time when it was stunningly easy to raise money. I like to say I was really brilliant about it. I had such a good PowerPoint presentation that the venture guys just threw money at me, but in fact they were throwing money at anybody in 2000. And that's almost not an exaggeration. To give you an idea, for those of you, again, that are kind of interested in the startup world, we had a slide deck with maybe 8, 10 slides describing what I just shared with you. The idea of running all these things on one idea, which is an exciting idea, but for heaven's sakes, it's an idea. And we had a bit of a reputation because I had been through one successful startup before, which helps. And the venture people, think, okay, this guy might know what he's doing. And for that, they gave us $24 million in cash for 33% of our company. Now, of course, I started this with a few other guys that had not done a startup before. This is my second. And all of a sudden, we have $24 million in the bank, and we still own 66% of the company. So what's the obvious thing that we wanted to do? You just go home, take it and go home. Give it back 33%. You can't do that, though. They're very particular about that. It's pretty exciting. So we got $24 million in the bank, and we start our journey, trying to build this product that we thought we were going to build. And we go at it. And then we had to raise another round of financing. We ran out of cash. This is pretty expensive. We're building our own chips. We're building all our own software stacks. I mean, it's a rather complex thing to do. A lot of hardware, proto expense. So we raised another round from Broadcom, $25 million. We raised a total about nearly $50 million. And then all hell broke loose. The market crashed. So in 2002, when I raised my second round, I raised about $25 million from Broadcom. I raised what's called a pre-money valuation of $200 million, $220 million, which says we're going to say your company's worth $220 million, and we're going to give you another 25, which means you can figure that the percentage, they took a very small percentage. They took another 13, 15, 14%. Great. Then in 2003, the world just came to an end, and tech just got crushed. This is when, you remember in 2000, the company Priceline, which was selling at that time airline tickets, reselling airline tickets, was worth more than all of the airlines combined. I mean, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to look at it and say, there's something a little bit wrong here. And so, of course, it came undone, and the bubble burst. So, okay, now it's a whole new game, and I'm trying to raise capital. Now, I have about 90, 95 people working for the company. We're getting close to out of cash. You have to raise money, or you go home, right? So I'm out pitching to try to get my next round. We've now built this product, by the way. We've got the chips back. It's kind of working. It's pretty cool. Couldn't get around the finance. Taught me something, which is that it's easy to raise money in a good situation. The tough part is when you're trying to convince some people when you're in an environment like that. And that's when you find out who leaders are. Who are leaders? Because leaders know that the right time to invest is in a down market. When there's a down market, you look like crazy because you can find all of the great companies and you can make your investments and you come out great. So leaders will invest. Followers will back out. In the venture industry, there's about 90% followers and about 10% leaders. True. So it's interesting. It was an interesting lesson. We ultimately could only raise money we almost would have to give up most of the companies, the venture guys. It was a really punitive round. So we sold our company to Alcatel. That was in 2003. Now what happened after that is kind of remarkable. We had a team of about 90 guys and gals. More guys than gals, and I've been trying to correct that ever since. So any of you gals in here that are interested, and guys, we have a lot of talented people, but we joined, and Alcatel took a chance. They bought our company because our customers were saying, hey, that's a neat company, and I know the market's tough, but we like that product. And so they were telling Alcatel, you should consider buying this company, and they did. They bought us for $150 million, roughly $152 million. It's a decent outcome. Not as good as it could have been, but very good for the time. Extremely good for the time. And I told the Alcatel management team, look, I think we can get this team to stick around instead of leaving like the entrepreneurs often do. But we're going to have to put a structure in place where we can share in the success of the product if you want the team to stick around, and I'm happy to do that. So we negotiated a thing where the team, which we had no sales yet. We had sold our first unit only, just one unit. So they did it. They did it with us. Said, okay, why not? We'll give you guys a cut at it, and you make it successful. And we grew a $3 billion business over time. Today, of the 90 people I had when we started the company, 13 years later, 75 of them are still with me. Amazing. But these are very talented people that could get jobs anywhere. And they're there I'll go back to this a little bit. They're there because we're still having fun. We're still having fun. We're still focused on the right things. We're still in an environment that's functional. We're still sharing the success. And everybody's kind of enjoying it. And say, well, why wouldn't we continue to do this? This is not every day. And I will say something to you about that, which is true. When you find a good situation, whether it's in a big company or a small company, where the team's good, it's gelling, and it feels good, and you're making progress on a project that you think you believe in, stick with it. It's not everywhere. In fact, I'm going to counsel you a little bit on that because one of the things that I think is easy to do is to say, I want to join X, where X is the company, because X is cool. But I'm going to dispel that notion a little bit and say, don't join a company, join a team, if you can. And if you get into a team that you don't feel is particularly good, find another team. Because it's about those people you're working with and the project you're working on. That's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it fun. You can pick the best company out there, and you can be in the wrong team, and it'd be worse place to be than a less interesting company, but you're in the middle of a really exciting project and team. And that will serve you better long-term in your career. The name is good. You can sign up, yeah, I was at blah. Yes, but it's way more important to associate with great people and do something in your career. Way more important. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is the evolution of our business. Alcatel merged with Lucent and then Nokia. Nokia, what I built is the network piece. This is the network piece. So I'm not going to bore you, but on the left, eNode B, DSL, PON, Ethernet. You can guess what that is. Those are all the access technologies. And eNode B is the base station that takes waves off the air from your cell phone. DSL and GPON are your connections to your house. These are all the connections that connect us to the internet. And then behind that, there's these massive networks of backhaul aggregation, back into an IP edge, back into an IP and optical core. That's all the stuff that my group builds inside of Nokia. And Nokia really is the whole thing. So what is Nokia? And again, this is the core. I'm talking about the core and the edge here. This is, by the way, this is the ad insert right here. This is the advertisements coming. I'm just kidding. So this is the core of the network, and this is what it looks like. So the products we build in my group are these massive routing platforms and massive optical devices. Just to give you just a feel for it, the optical devices nowadays, we're generally running as many as 120, now we're doubling it to 240 wavelengths of 100 gigabits per second over very long distances, including under the ocean, on a single fiber. So 12.2 tera is pretty doable right now. 24 tera is coming really quick, and then we're going to increase the amount per wavelength. And of course, when I said earlier Shannon's limit, this is really testing Shannon's limit. I mean, we are pumping bits down it. Now to do that, it's very interesting. To do that, if you see this piece of equipment on your right, that's an optical piece of equipment. Every one of those cards is a transponder you need a transponder per wavelength. So if you want to shove 120 wavelengths onto a single fiber, you need about 10, 15 of those boxes on either end of that tiny fiber to demultiplex. It's actually more like 20 boxes. You have racks of equipment. But why would we do that? We do that because fiber is hard to fiber is hard to put in the ground, and once you get a fiber, you want to maximize it. In fact, the way Google builds their optical network, and Facebook, I know, and Apple, they buy the fiber from somebody who's built it. The guys who build this, they're construction people. And it costs a lot for them to build it. Once they have it, you can bet they get a lot of money for the right to use that fiber. So what does Google want to do, and companies like that? They would like to put as much data on it, so they'll buy a lot of equipment to jam that equipment. And then to your left is the routing equipment that sits above the optical layer and makes all these decisions based on tables and reroutes traffic live. I kind of love what we do, because one of the things I think about, which I think is really an interesting way to think about our business, is the internet's a little bit like a road system. There's only one difference. It has tributaries, it has main thoroughfares, it has switching centers, which you could argue is the intersections of the roads, right? And you take directions and you route your way, except it's self-routing. You use Google Maps or whatever to plan your way through it. It's like that, except for one difference. The traffic is growing 40 to 50% per year. So imagine a road system where there's 40 to 50% more cars per year. What do? You rebuild the road system continuously. So the industry actually continues to rebuild the network real time, continuously. Wow. And guess what? Customers expect more. They expect uptime because they're now running all of their most critical traffic on this. Hospital traffic. They want to do all, security traffic. So we have this interesting project as an industry which we do together. It's co-opetition. We compete, but we have to also cooperate because our job is to literally build these networks full speed as fast as we possibly can to keep up with bandwidth and make it stable the entire time. It's really fascinating, really interesting. So this is the bottom line. What does Nokia do now? We build gigantic all the big networks, the biggest networks. In fact, if you run a packet on the internet today, you will undoubtedly hit a number of our nodes, because if you run a trace route, which you may do from your own, if you know networking and you've done trace route, you can see how many router hops there are between you and any place you're going. Just do it from a command line interface. You'll see there's 15 hops, 7 to 10 at least hops. Well, 20 to 30% of the routers out there are ours now, so we know every packet's pretty much hitting our routers. It's fascinating. It's kind of interesting. It actually feels kind of cool if you're involved in building it, because you know that your effort, your code, your design, your VHDL is literally supporting the global infrastructure that's running everything. Pretty neat. Nokia, just one last comment on Nokia, which just to let you know, still has some ambitions in consumer, because that's its heritage as well. So you might, I just talked today to the lady at the VR lab, and we were talking about the fact, that we built or I should say Nokia has built a VR camera, which is a real-time VR camera that does spatial audio, and they're selling it to Hollywood and various places to do VR recording. And it's very cool. When they launched this, I was mentioning it, the launch was a concert across town, and the press would put on a goggle and be in the concert real-time while they were playing, and they could look around and watch. So it's kind of a really interesting, future-looking, how do you record not only real-time, but record events. And then the other thing that the company is in is you might have seen it bought a company called WeThings, which is building digital health consumer items, which I think is a really interesting new area. Just as an aside. So now you know who Nokia is. Nokia is principally building big networks. The biggest networks, $25 billion company, quite large, competitive business, but really building the global internet, plus interest in some of the new consumer spaces. That's the new Nokia. I thought I'd talk about cloud a little bit, and where it's going to, and I always love it. Cloud has been such a frenzy, and it's become such a big term. All of you, of course, have heard about cloud, right? Just check. Okay, still alive? Still with me? I love it. You know what? You know these things are in a frenzy when you see stuff like this, when the marketing guys run amok. I love this ad. This is my favorite ad because the Western Digital guy actually found a way to take the cloud and stick it in a box for your own personal storage. I mean, this is genius. I don't know how they did it. It's incredible. It's incredible engineering. I almost fell out of my chair when I saw this, but cloud has been crazy. But I want to talk a little bit about cloud because cloud is fundamentally new. I should say the idea of running applications centralized is certainly not new. In fact, if you look at the history of compute, you know it started all centralized with terminals, right? And then personal computers were born, and people started writing desktop applications. But there were still mainframes writing business applications, big centralized applications, right? And now there's this cloud thing that's going crazy. And I want to talk a little bit about why. Why is cloud so incredible right now? Why should you care about it? Cloud's so incredible right now, not because all of a sudden somebody had a brilliant idea like Google or whatever, said, gee, I know, or Evernote, or whoever. It's not, let's build this application this way. It's not that. It's because for 10 years we've been building access infrastructure, and now there's a fairly good amount of bandwidth to everybody's home and to everybody's mobile, more than ever. This is a graph that's kind of interesting. It's just the U.S. It does not include wireless, it's wireline only. About $250 billion was spent in the U.S. in wireline access in the last decade, which is through 14, building out capacity to your home, to homes and businesses. And then you add on top of that, there's billions and billions of dollars, but more importantly, a decade at a time. Because a trench, put something in your house, put up cell towers, build the network, it doesn't happen in a day. That's a decade at a time. So in the background, while we've all been doing our jobs, doing whatever we do, there's been this mounting infrastructure that's growing and growing and growing that has the capacity to carry a lot of traffic. And there's two other things that have fundamentally changed in the last decade. Certainly a migration, as we were involved in, from all kinds of protocols to one protocol, one with global addressing IP protocol. And the other one is compute performance and virtualization. Compute performance has gone through the roof. And those are the three things that really were the precursors to cloud that have made cloud happen. What do I mean by cloud? Cloud just means that an application developer now, if they want to build an application, doesn't have to be constrained. In the past, they would have to build a personal computer application and keep the data on the PC. If they tried to go over the WAN, it would be too slow, it would be unusable. So there's usability. If they wanted coherence of information and they wanted to share information, they would have to build a centralized application and use just a terminal screen. So there was no way to do what they wanted to do. Application developers want to deliver both a good experience on your handheld plus coherence and sharing across. So now we have the ability to do it. And that's cloud. It's not centralized, it's not distributed, it's optimized. Application optimized. Why am I talking about this? Because it's so fundamental to everything that's going on right now. And it's one of the biggest changes we've seen in our industry. It's changing everything. Right? So that's why, from my point of view, cloud is critical to understand. And it's affecting, in fact, us. The network itself is having to change. And I'll just say in brief, networks have traditionally been fairly static. If you think about it, an IP address was in a place where there was a resource. And then your handheld or your desktop computer was another IP address or gateway, which was in a place, and it was static. Now, this is all changing. It's all incredibly dynamic. So networks in the past have been very static, very robust, but now they need to be incredibly dynamic with cloud. With EC2, with cloud, you have to be able to bring up applications. Applications might exist in one place, they might move them to another place. They might exist in many places. So this has created a lot of tension in our business. And it's a really interesting space right now because we're having to deal with it. We have a few startups. In fact, New Age Networks is a really interesting company that we have started inside of Nokia to focus on SDN. How many of you heard about software-defined networks? Okay, fair number of you. Right. So we're absolutely hugely invested in that. And we've got a 4-year project now, and we're into some very big customers with SDN technology. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit of history on Nokia, what the company is, what I do inside of Nokia, just to let you know. And a little bit of why it's kind of exciting right now, because cloud is changing everything now. Changing everything. And I said earlier, change is really fundamentally the coolest thing. It's risk and it's opportunity. And it's great to be in an industry that had so much risk and so much opportunity, more important. So I now want to shift and talk a little bit about some thoughts I've had in my time working my career so far. I'm not done. This is not a commencement address or anything like that. It's just some thoughts. First, I kind of learned one thing that I thought was, and I would just share this with you. Dreams matter. What do I mean by that? One thing I learned is actually when I was here at the University of Illinois, I always wanted to run a startup. I don't know why. I just always wanted to. And actually, even before Illinois, I thought about it. It was on my mind. It was always something I wanted to do. And in retrospect, somehow I got there. And later in life, I kind of thought to myself, was I really just lucky? And I really have come to believe that one thing that's kind of interesting, if you set your sights on something, even something kind of distant, by setting your sights on it, it'll spawn 1,000 decisions, even some that you're not aware you're making at the time, that will lead you in that direction. It actually does kind of work that way. Intention matters. Kind of having a general direction makes a difference. I can point to many things I did along the way that, I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh yeah, that's my dream, maybe I'll do this. But I just, I want to do that. Yes, I think I will do that. I will take this. Because it's all about choices. And as I went, I kind of continued to look for opportunities, including my first step out of AMD into a startup to learn how startups, which was really, by the way, against my background. My background was more about, my father was, you find a good company, you stay in it. That was the generation, you stay. And so to jump out was a big step. Second is I've been saying, look for change. I love this saying, by the way. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen this saying before. It's a great quote. We're not sure who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't the fish. And the point is, if you're swimming in it, you probably don't even know it's there. And the point here is, the advice I give you on this is, when I talk about change, what you want to do when you're thinking about your first job, your first career, where you want to go. And this doesn't matter whether you want to be an entrepreneur or you want to be a technologist, by the way. And I will share with you that from my point of view, now having done this a few times, there's a lot of glory that goes to the entrepreneur that's at the head running the thing. But in my team, when it comes to rewards, I am the guys who are, there's some individual contributors that are the most brilliant engineers I've ever worked with that have decided to focus their life on the development of our products, and they're as important as the people running the thing. And we treat them that way. Because my view is we're a technology company. We build technology. Therefore, we really, really value top engineering. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be the guy running it, the guy marketing it, it doesn't matter. You got to look in your career, if you want to have some fun, I think it's better to have a thesis and say, I'm going to jump into an area that's ripe for change. And pick one. That's what I did. I kind of said, networking's interesting. I didn't know if it was going to how it would work, but it's kind of like, it's just being in a place where the stream is moving with you instead of against you. So you look for something that you think is going to impact the world in a big way. And I wouldn't shy away from big things either, by the way. Because big things are always interesting. Because when big things are disrupted, fun stuff happens. Opportunities are made, companies are built. And by the way, again, this doesn't matter whether it's a startup or you're having some fun in a big company doing something. It doesn't matter. It's just finding an area that's interesting and going through change it's a opportunity you have that not many people in the world have, because our industry is so dynamic. So keep an eye on it. The change that Apple brought out in the iPhone, in the phone business is stunning. Changed everything. The timing was a big part of it, but it's impressive. Some fundamental technological change that you're involved in right now here at the university, and you look at it and say, you know what, this could have a big, big impact. Get yourself into it. The next thing is get to the edge. So what that means is the world's changed a lot. It used to be that the way you get ahead in a field is by being in the research lab that's doing the leading research, which is still to a degree true. But the fact is, information is way more available now than it's ever been, and actually it's not as closely held. So actually you can get to the edge of a topic. When I say get to the edge, what I mean is, really be at the leading edge of a field. You picked an area for change, get to the edge. Learn it like crazy. This is what I did. I got into networking, I just buried myself in it. I learned everything I could possibly learn about it. I worked on it at night, I worked on it, it just was something I wanted to do, so I spent a lot of time on it. I didn't know where it was going to go necessarily at the time. I just knew I wanted to really, really understand it and become really good at it. And for those of you that want to do a startup, I'm going to bring Dilbert into the picture. So those two pieces of advice are for anybody who, as you're thinking about your career, as you're jumping into a company, whatever you decide to do, find an interesting area, make a thesis. You're swimming in it, so you have to step back and say, okay, what is really going to change? I'm going to jump into this area. Then get to the edge, focus on it. By the way, when I say get to the edge, a part of that is getting in with a good team, your first hire. And that's where I come back to this comment that I made. It's more important to find a great team to work with than it is a company name. Find a team that's doing great work at the edge. That's really at the edge of a topic, and they're a good team. I mean, I was walking through the lab, Martin Everhart, a graduate here, was the founder of Tesla. And I worked with him a little bit in the labs back in 83 and 84, and he didn't join BMW. He found some guys working, and he himself started and got involved with a new project focusing on the very edge of electric cars. Very cool. So this is a great Dilbert. There's many great Dilberts. If you guys are not students of Dilbert, you will become one as you get into industry. If you go into industry, I have a great idea for a startup company. All I need is seed investor and an engineer to do all the work. I believe the economic term what you have is nothing. And the point here is that actually the idea is really, it's important, but don't overestimate the importance of the idea. I can't tell you how many times guys come to me and say, hey, and say, yeah, that's a good idea, but venture investors, it's interesting to watch them, they invest in, and I do, as a big running a larger company division, and I want to start something, I invest in people. So it has to be an idea, but it has to have a team that can execute. If that's not there, I don't invest. What are you investing in? So it's not just about the idea, it's about the people you're working with. So if you want to do a startup, I have a few rules for you to think about. If you want to do a startup, whether in a big company or as a startup itself, and these are, I was asked once in Belgium to talk about, after we were acquired, to talk about being an entrepreneur and some advice. So I said, okay, here's the rules of being an entrepreneur. Number one, be approximately correct. And what I mean by that is, you're in this area of change, you're at the edge, come up with a thesis and make sure it's directionally correct. Don't wait till you're 100% correct, because by that time, it's over. Somebody's already there. Once you see something that's interesting to you and you kind of believe it, jump in. So be approximately correct. Now, it's important not to be 180 degrees off, because you can't course correct if you're 180 degrees off. But you can be 20 degrees off, it's no problem. Just be approximately correct. Find an thing that you think is going to change. Electric car, whatever it is, go. Jump. Boldness has a genius and a magic to it. Find great people. The most important thing is work with great teams. This is a theme throughout, of course. Work with great people and find them. And then persevere. And persevere is what I talked up front, is one of the things that I've seen. It's really interesting if you look at corporations, in the universities, in the valley. All the greatest things have taken a decade. You never hear about the decade. You hear about a couple of years, you hear the story, the movie, blah, blah, blah. But look back. It's a decade. It's 10 years of work. So get in there and stay on it. Stay focused over time. Stay focused over time. And now I'm going to get to that third word that I told you I was going to tell you up front. That was, I said there was intention, right? Perseverance, staying focused, choices, focus. This is the most important rule. Be lucky. And if you're good at this, by the way, don't worry about anything else. And I'm joking to a degree, but I'm actually not, because, well, the reality is, chance favors prepared minds. Yes, if you're good, and you're at the edge, and you focus on change, like I did. I think I was good. I think I got to the edge in networking. I focused on a major change. The outcome can either be, it can be fantastic if the market's good. It can be horrible if the market's bad. It can crash and burn. You just don't know. You have to be lucky. So really focus on this. And if you're great at it, don't worry about anything else. I know guys and gals who made a fantastic sum of money in the bubble times with a product that never worked. But I would say they're outliers. And what you want to do is build a product that has real value so that whether it's a great market or a bad market, we came out in a bad market, we still had a reasonable outcome. Everybody did well. We had a great time. We've enjoyed it. Great. So I have an equation. I know you guys are engineering guys, so I thought I would represent this in an equation because when I talk to my guys, success then is intention for your choices and focus over time. Focus over time. It's not 2 years. It's staying on it once you've kind of identified it. I think that's kind of trying to sum up everything. Some of the more meaningful things I've learned as I've gone along here and done the things I've done. And I've been lucky, and I know that. And all of you are lucky, by the way, by being here right now. I have to tell you, we're all very lucky because we have the opportunity to be not only in this industry, in this period of time, in this school, in this moment. So congratulations to you on your first good choices. Congratulations to you on being here, and good luck to you in all the things you do going forward. Thank you very much.
Did anyone have any questions?
Sure.
So I do work right now with brain-computer interfacing type stuff. That is, the more I learn about what's going on in the field, it feels like it's like ripe to do a lot of interesting things, but invasively. So for like a consumer market, it's not really an option, but for a research, it's maybe an option. How do you see the balance there on like if there's a field that's in that state, would you recommend moving in that direction, or
I mean, personally, I think brain-computer interface is fantastically interesting. The thing that, if you get to the edge, because when you're close there, you can kind of understand whether there's a practical application. It might take a while. It's okay if it's going to take a while. That's fine. In fact, it's some ways better, because if something is immediate on you, there's already 27, So I like situations like that where there's change. It's not as fully understood yet, but you have to assess a little bit, which is part of the project of understanding getting to the edge, is understand whether you believe that it can have an interesting utility to help change the world, help change people, help someone with a handicap, whatever. If you believe that, then it's amazing.
If you believe that, and you think it'll happen in the 10 to 15 year span versus the 5 to 10 year span,
I wouldn't shy away from a 10. Okay, certainly 5 to 10, I'm more comfortable with.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because 10 to 15 normally, when people say 10 to 15, it means it's almost saying I'm not really sure. And you want to be relatively sure. Now, having said that, you're young. Take a few years to see how it unfolds. Stay at the edge and figure out what, and you'll learn whether or not, my little brother, who's the university I grabbed PhD here, went down road on displays, evolution of displays with micron technology. And it was fantastically interesting, but it didn't pan out. But he invested a bit of time in it, and I think it was a good time because that was a massive market, and it could have been completely overturned by what was happening. A massive opportunity to change how we use displays. I like those things. This, likewise, is a potentially massive field, I would imagine. I don't know the details, but it would occur to me, especially to help people that have handicaps or whatever that are trying to regain. That's really interesting, right? So, happy to talk about it after, but I wouldn't shy away from it if you feel like it's in that time frame. Yeah?
So this is more of a national security related question, but so a few weeks ago, Krebs on security was at like internet threatening level 600 gigabits per second. And this was basically enabled by insecure IoT devices. Although like we have these buzzwords like IoT and like cloud computing and all this, have we not potentially opened a Pandora's box threatening the internet as a whole? And so what are your opinions on how we should protect the internet and how to modify our network systems in order to
Great question.
fit with this?
Great question. Security, by the way, guys, guys and gals, is a great field right now. And the reason I say security is a great field right now is it's a big unsolved problem. And cloud, again, I mentioned how big cloud is. Cloud has broken the security field. and IoT also. And there's no solutions right now. There's a bunch of startups. I'm investing in some, by the way, that are trying to solve this problem. And the reason the problem has changed is because there used to be this idea of perimeter security. I have my network, and I'll put something at the perimeter. Well, you know what? There is no perimeter anymore. It's gone. Applications are running everywhere. And to your point, then you can have denial of service attacks, you have coordinated denial of service attacks. Now, the denial of service attacks, DOS attacks, the network has to play a role in solving that. Because you can't really solve it at the endpoints. And, you have to assume that malware will somehow get to some, like you said, you open a Pandora's box of IoT. We've got tremendous number now, an explosion potentially in the number of nodes. For those of you that are not aware of what a denial of service attack, how many of you know what a denial of service attack is? Oh, many of you do, okay. It's a very complex thing to stop because, and it has to be done. So we in our products, by the way, do have the ability to detect and then thwart DOS attacks, and I think we're going to have to get better at that, by the way, to answer your question. On DOS in particular, they're a particularly pernicious issue. But I think we can solve that problem in the network, by the way. I'm more concerned, honestly, about application security because, I think that's going to only get worse here. And so, and I think there has to be a new way now to secure applications. And what I mean by that is, I'm a corporation or an individual. My data now is sitting everywhere. It's everywhere. And I can't stop myself. The economics of AWS or a cloud are too compelling. So I'm starting to put stuff out there. Yet, how do I know that they're not compromised? How do you know the OS isn't compromised? So, a big area, great area, by the way. Encourage you to look at that as one of those big change things. It's an interesting space. Any other questions? Yep.
So what you were saying about how you value your processor is around 200 million, but for you guys having for sale, how do you determine or gauge what your value of your processor is when you're say you're pitching to a bunch of templates or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. How you establish is so interesting, right? So I have this company, right, and I go out there and I say, I want to raise some money. You need to establish a market price for the company is what you're doing, effectively. And the only way to establish a market price for a company is to have multiple bidders. It's the only way. And one of the difficult things about being an entrepreneur is that if you don't get multiple bidders, you're at the complete behest of the financiers that are around your table already. Let's say you started a company and I put 10 million into it, and you ran through the 10 million and you were doing great work. And the market's tough. So you go out and you talk to 3, 5, let's say 20 other venture capital firms, and none of them are interested in investing because they're too scared, whatever, they're not putting their money into anything. Then I get to dictate the terms. And if you want to continue, which is good. And now I have that. So the answer to your question is the way a market, the price of it's not what you would think, because there's no earnings, there's no price to earnings multiple. It's not like a public company where you can look at the inherent earning power of it. It's a group of guys and gals that are in venture or in corporations saying, I believe that guy, and I think I'm going to value that thing at blah. And then if you get competition going, you can get that to a really, and that's your job as an entrepreneur actually. As the guy running it, and that is to get that frenzy going around your company to get the value as high as possible. Having said that, by the way, I will say, a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking they have to keep. They look at Shark Tank. These people are saying, oh, I don't know if I should give it 20% of my company. Look, it's 20% of nothing when you start. Give it up. Give it up. Just don't give them 80, 90. That's the game. And think about that, right? Because it's okay. Other people are going to have to make money along the way for you to make money because they're putting in capital. It's real. They deserve a return if they're going to take a risk on a company that's as risky as a tech startup. Many tech startups go to zero. It's just the way it is. Yeah, you have to live through that, by the way. I've been lucky so far in that regard. I haven't had one go to zero, but actually I've invested in tech startups that have gone to zero. I don't talk about this. I only talk about the successes. But anyway, I look smarter. So that's between us. We're going to keep that between us. Anybody else? Yeah.
You said finding the team. Can you give us an anecdote of the cloud-native team member or
Oh, yeah.
And how you guys contribute to
Yeah, it's a great question. I've become a big believer in this, and you guys probably agree with it, all the way back to my University of Illinois days and before. And I'll say something that's kind of, I don't know if it's controversial. One thing I've learned that was really interesting, and I'd be interested in the feedback of the room on this. If I think back to my classes, when we were project time, there were always 5 or 7 guys and gals that were the go-to people that always got, that were at the core of it. Didn't mean that there didn't have to be a bigger team, but in the center of any team, there's a few folks that are more engaged, more focused, or whatever, for whatever reason, pouring more into it than the others. It's just the way it is. If I look at my teams, we have a lot of very good people, and we have some superstars too. And I'm not trying to denigrate anybody, I'm just saying that's just the way it is. There's people who have decided they're going to pour more in for whatever reason. It's their own interest, whatever. And the key is to look for, I think, is to look for people like that, because you have to have a set of those type of people in the center of these activities. Because in the end, in the center of any great company, there's a core team of hyper-dedicated people that are going to decide, I'm going to pour my life into this thing for a period of time. And by the way, make no mistake, it is about pouring your life in when it comes to startups or starting any project like this. I've come to learn this one thing about what do we have as humans to give in our lifetime. We have our time and intention, our focus. That's it. If you focus on a garden, you can make it grow. Focus on a family, you make a family grow. Focus on a relation, you make a relation grow. Focus on a business. But you only have so much of it. Hours in a day. So you make choices. And one thing about a startup is you have to decide at that point in your life, I'm going to pour it in. That's what I want. Doesn't mean you can't have a relationship. I'm not saying that. Although I will say it's tough on relationships sometimes because you have to pour it in. But it's fun. One of the things that's kind of changed in the world, I think, by the way, is that to be successful now, it's become a little more intense because there's so many teams around with access to information that can do similar things. So you got to, when you find something, you got to run at it pretty hard. It's fun, by the way. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's really cool, but it does take that level. So what I would say about that is I look for guys and gals who are really in that mode. They really want to invest themselves and are into the details, not high level only, talking about high level stuff, but actually understand it down to the detail. People that are a bit perfectionists. Now, some people would say perfectionists are difficult sometimes, but perfectionists are also important because they care and they want to make sure the projects they're working on succeed. So a few ideas, and just to give you a thought along the way, I met several people like this, and including some people, by the way, that I would argue are a bit difficult to work with. And I've had to make decisions where the difficult to work with is okay because they're so good at what they do, they're so dedicated what they do that they are a great part of the team. There's no black and white answer, but it's learning people and picking people that to work with and work around that are talented. Super important. Any question?
Yeah, this kind of goes off a couple of things you said earlier. First of all, I really appreciate you saying that being lucky is a very important part of this as well.
Yeah.
What would you recommend if you're not the luckiest person ever?
That's a great question.
It's not that good.
What would you recommend if you're not the luckiest person ever? I have an answer for that, by the way, which is it's way more important, in my view, to focus on value and be at the edge. Get at the edge, pick the area and get at the edge than it is to be lucky. You can go along happy, guys know you get lucky, but the thing is, if chance favors a prepared mind. And you don't have to have luck to do well. You have to have a certain amount. You have a certain amount by being here. You do. You don't have to, but the more important thing, by the way, I learned this early in my career at AMD because I was in a very political organization for once, and it was all politics. It was about who knew the boss, who was telling the boss who was better. And I got really pissed off because I felt like my work was not being recognized. I said, for heaven's sakes, can't they see? Don't they understand? And so it drove me crazy, and I kind of thought to myself, you know what? There's two ways to get ahead in corporations. For lack of a better term, kiss ass and work the structure, or focus on your inherent value. And I select the latter all day long because that really works. inland. But you have to find yourself into good organizations. If you do a great job, you'll make progress. You might have to change jobs here and there because sometimes organizations are not run so well, and you'll feel that when you're in your corporate career. But focus on your value, focus on what you're interested in. You'll make progress. Okay, I take that. Are we done? Yep. Okay, great.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You should know this, guys, because as I mentioned earlier, this is his birthday. I think we should sing for him,
Oh
right?
my God.
Yeah? Sing for him, right?
I should not have told you that. Really, you shouldn't have. That was complicated.
Yeah. So, this place is talking well.
I think one's fine.
All of them.
This would imply that I'm 6 years old.
26.
26, I'll take that.
All right.
I'd take 36.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Basil.
I was waiting for that.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. In about 30 minutes, McMania will be starting here. If you're an alumni, we've got a special treat for your Murphys. So, thank you guys for coming.